بيكم أعزائي الطلبة والطالبات، ومع حلقة جديدة من مادة الساينس لبريب 2 تحت رعاية وإشراف وزارة التربية والتعليم. عايزة أسألكم سؤال أول الحلقة، يا ترى أنتوا ذاكرتوا الدرسين اللي فاتوا؟ طيب حتى لو ذاكرنا، طب إحنا في حاجات مش عارفينها، طيب إحنا عايزين نعرف أكتر. هفكركم كده بسرعة إحنا عملنا إيه الحلقات اللي فاتت. We started our curriculum this year by studying a part of history about the creation of the modern periodic table, and then we know some parts, some blocks of the periodic table, and then in the second lesson we talked about the graduation of elements in the modern periodic table. زي ما انتم شايفين كده احنا عمالين نخش ناخد close view كده للتيبل gradually ونعرف كل part فيه كان ايه البروبرتيز بتاعته، الاليمنتس دي arranged ازاي. الدرس اللي فات كنا بنتكلم عن graduation of elements in the modern periodic table وخدنا some properties، actually هما 3 properties. اتكلمنا عن graduation of size، اتكلمنا عن الميتاليك والنون ميتاليك property، واتكلمنا عن electronegativity property. وكان تحت كل جزء من دول حكينا شوية حاجات، اتعرفنا على شوية معلومات. انت لو مذاكر كويس التو lessons الأولانيين هتقدر تشتغل كويس قوي في lesson 3، لأنه حقيقة الأمر إن lesson 3 it's based on totally based on what you have know about lesson 1 and 2. إحنا هنتكلم النهاردة عن main groups of the periodic table. Main groups of the periodic table. Actually, we are not going to study all the groups, but we'll just focus on just 2 groups of the periodic table. So, this is why from the beginning today I told you that if you study well lesson 1 and lesson 2, it will be very simple and very easy to know lesson 3. طب أنا ما ذاكرتش، هفكرك مع بعض النهاردة هنفتكر كلنا إيه المعلومات الأساسية اللي إحنا خدناها في lesson 1 and 2 so we can go through lesson 3. يلا نبتدي الحلقة بتاعتنا. Today we will study lesson 3. Lesson 3 is about main groups in the modern periodic table. By the end of this lesson, you will know the valency of alkali metals. We deduce general properties of alkali metals. Actually, the main groups, they are 2 groups. احنا هنتكلم النهارده عن هم اصلا في الليسون يعني 2 groups, but today we are going to talk about just alkali metal. So our objective for today is to know some properties of alkali metals. All the time when you study something about the periodic table, it's better to have it in front of your eyes. حلو قوي ان انا يبقى قدامي البريودك تيبل وابتدي just كده to revise what we have taken before. As you remember, we have this area at the most left side. This part, it's S block. The other side, if you remember, it's what? P block. And then we have in the middle, we have D block, and what's below the table? F block. Yes, this is the first part, to know the main parts of the table. And then, as you see here, we have alkali metals, this group, and then we will talk about the halogens. يبقى all the lesson, it's about 2 groups, alkali metals and halogens. Again, alkali metals and halogens. These the 2 groups of the main groups of the periodic table. يعني هو طبعا في groups كتيرة بس احنا بنتكلم بس على these 2 groups, alkali metals و halogens. For today we are going to talk about only alkali metals, and next session إن شاء الله نتكلم عن الهالوجنز. Okay? Where are the alkali metals? At the very beginning قلت لكم احنا من our previous information we may know a lot about today's lesson. يلا انتوا كده فكروا، هاتوا ورقة وقلم، هاتوا your copybook ويلا كده اكتبوا لي، قولوا لي تقدروا تقولوا ايه عن الالكلاي metal from your previous study. Number 1, it may be in S block. Good. What else? In especially its group what? 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, in which part exactly? As you see, alkali metals, they are the first group in S block. So they are in the right side or in the left side? Yes, in the left side. So these are alkali metals: lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, and cesium. Lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, and cesium. You may ask yourself, where is hydrogen? Hydrogen is the first one at group 1A. So where is hydrogen? In fact, the hydrogen is not considered from the alkali metals because it's non-metal actually, but only because it has one electron in the only one level that hydrogen has got. So it's put here in this place because it's under one electron. For all groups that have one electron in the last energy shell, it should be placed in the same group اللي هي اسمها alkali metal. فاحنا حطيناه هنا بس، او الساينتست يعني حطوه هنا بس. This is because it has only one electron in the only shell that hydrogen has got. لكن otherwise it's not a metal. فاحنا طول الوقت مش هنتكلم عن الهيدروجين، لكن we are going to talk about lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, and cesium. Of course, as they are in the same group, so they have or they will have, what do you expect? What about the properties? Yes, they will have almost the same properties. وده اللي احنا هنحاول نتعرف عليه النهارده. يبقى number one, they are located on the left side of the modern periodic table. They are the first group in S block. Here is the lithium, and you may search the web to find some photos about lithium or the other elements. Here is lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, and cesium. You should know also name and the symbol of each element. Lithium, it's Li with atomic number 3, and below it sodium, its symbol is Na with atomic number 11. Potassium, its atomic number is 19, it's K, symbol بتاعه K, and rubidium, Rb, and finally cesium. Lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, and cesium, you should keep them in your mind. As you see here, here's some photos about these elements, group 1A or the alkali metals. Type. What else? This number one to know. Name, symbol, a place in the table. All of them, as you saw before in the picture, they are solids. Solids at room temperature. While they are all metals, like all metals, they have metallic luster. Metallic luster means they are shiny. Shiny يعني بيبرقوا كده، ليهم يعني they reflect the light بشكل زي الجولد زي السيلفر، بيبرقوا كده بيلمعوا. they have luster. They are solids at room temperature. Solid at room temperature يعني they exist in solid state. We can find them in solid state. You know, of course, we have solid state, liquid state, gaseous state, but the alkali metals in group 1A, they are solids. Of course, as they are metals, they are good conductors of heat and electricity. And this is very important property that you are going to study later about sodium, because sodium is one of the alkali metals and it's a good conductor of heat and electricity. So we use it in very important thing by the end of the lesson I'm going to tell you about. So they are good conductor of heat and electricity, and they conduct heat in a good way, they conduct electricity in a good way. يعني I mean, when suppose this is a piece of sodium or else, when heat comes from a side, it can pass through the piece of sodium or potassium or lithium. طبعا انتوا درستوا قبل كده الconductivity in general, whether it's for heat or for electricity. يبقى again, lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, they are all metals, alkali metals. In the left side of the table, in S block, in group 1A. Physical properties. Physical properties, it means يعني some properties that we can see يعني in general كده when we use alkali metals. Like what? Like a density of alkali metal. Lithium, sodium, rubidium, potassium. I'm telling you the names once more this because I need you to remember their names. Most of them, they have low density. You studied before the density. Do you remember anything about the density? They have low density. That means they can float over water surface. And if you put a piece of lithium or sodium over water in a beaker contains water, they will float and they will not sink. Sink يعني مش بيغرقوا لتحت. لا, they will float. انتوا لو جبتوا مثلا let's say piece of iron and put it in water, it will sink. But here الالكالاي metal this way اللي هم lithium, sodium, potassium, they float. طب what about rubidium and cesium? In fact, rubidium and cesium, they sink in water. So they have more density than water. يبقى now we have, let's divide them into two groups. Lithium, sodium, potassium, they have lower density than water. That means when you put any piece of them in water, this piece will float over water surface and will not sink down. But rubidium and cesium, they have more density, so they will sink in water. Here is a picture that shows you how they keep lithium, sodium, and potassium. By the way, let's have a question. The question said that some alkali metals float over water surface. ليه الالكالاي metal float over water surface? Like whom? Like قلنا sodium وليثيوم وبوتاسيوم only. ليه تفتكروا هم float؟ لسه قايلينها من شوية. It's very simple and easy. Because they have lower density than water, they can float. Another question. Rubidium, cesium sink in water. Why do you think that rubidium and cesium sink in water? ليه مش float زي الليثيوم والصوديوم والبوتاسيوم? Very simple and easy question, because they have more density than water. يبقى the first point that we talked about, it's alkali metal and their densities. Their density lower than water in case of lithium, sodium, potassium, but rubidium and cesium, they have more density than water. Another question, and you may get this question from the Egyptian Knowledge Bank. Complete. Complete what? Elements of group 1A are named what? And they belong to what block? What do you think? Let's get a revisal table. Elements in group 1A, they are named by, yes, alkali metals, and they belong to S block, which is the first group in, which is the first block in the periodic table. Do you remember how many groups do we have in S block? Yes, 2 groups. One of them is alkali metal. Group 1A is alkali metal. The second one 2A مش مشكلة نعرف النيم بتاعها دلوقتي. هي اسمها alkali earth metal بس احنا مش مقررة علينا. So, write scientific term. The first group in S block, or you may have such a question in a different way, or elements of group 1A in the modern periodic table. الاليمنتس اللي اسمهم 1A اللي اسمهم الفيرست جروب ان اس بلوك ده اسمه ايه؟ اديله another name. اقول ايه؟ كلمة ايه؟ التايتل بتاعنا النهارده اللي هو Alkali Metals. This question is about arranging some elements ascendingly according to the atomic size. تعالوا كده الكويستشن ده هيحتاج مننا شوية كتابة. تعالوا ناخد الكويستشن ده على البورد. الكويستشن عندنا بيقول لنا ايه؟ Arrange the following elements ascendingly according to the atomic size. Ascendingly يعني from the small one to the big one. The elements here are Z11, N19, X12. By the way, you should remember that these names, these elements, these symbols are not real ones. For example, Z11, it's any element, أي element. مش بنقصد بيه اسم حد معين. يعني don't think that N means nitrogen. No, this is totally wrong. Here, symbols or abbreviations for some elements in general, X, Y, Z, F, أي element, names هنا is not standing for a real name for the element. So how can we arrange them in ascending order according to the size? Let's remember, this is the table. If you see here, if you remember from your previous study in the second lesson, we talked about in the size, it increases in a certain pattern. What are the pattern or the trend? قلنا لما بنمشي كده from left to right, the size decreases, and when you move from up to down, the size increases. So, how to answer this question? ازاي اجاوبه؟ فكروا كده نعمل ايه؟ Yes. Number one, you should make electronic configuration. For the element Z11, الatomic structure بتاعه يبقى 2, 8, and 1. The next one, N19, it's 2, 8, 8, and 1. Finally, X12, it's 2, 8, and 2. So, look at this configuration. 2, 8, 1. The second one هيبقى 2, 8, 8, 1. And then the last one, 2, 8, 2. You can extract from these three elements one of them with the most big size from these three elements. مين أكبر واحد فيهم؟ And why? Yes, this is good. This is the biggest one. ده أكبر واحد. Why? Because it has 4 energy levels. 2, 8, 8, 1. It means its electrons are distributed in 4 levels. This is N. طيب. What about the other two? Z and X. Z, it has 3 energy levels, and X as well has 3 energy levels. So, which one is bigger? As they are in the same, yes, good. You are good. They are in the same period. طب لو أنا عندي 2 elements in the same period, what do you think about the size? The size in this case, when you move from left to right, increase or decrease? It should be decreases. يعني أنا المفروض عندي البيج one هيبقى first place ووراه على طول one smaller than it, الأصغر منه شوية. They have 2, 8, 1 and the other one 2, 8, 2. Did you see that there is a relation between the two elements? Yes. X12, it is the element that is directly follow Z11 in the table. يعني أنا لو قلت إن أنا عندي هنا ال Z11 يبقى اللي وراه على طول 12. So which one is bigger in size? It should be Z. And what's next? X12. So if you arrange them, so we should start ascendingly. That means I should start with X, the smallest one, and then Z11, a little bit bigger, but they are in the same period. And finally, we have N19, the biggest one in these 3 elements because it has 4 levels. Let's check the elements دي actually where in the periodic table. بجد فين مكانهم حقيقي يعني. Here we have this element has 11 electron, which is sodium, N11, and the element that follow it, which is magnesium 12, and finally we have potassium 19. هم دول الاليمنتس اللي احنا اتكلمنا عنهم من شويه. طيب يعني هن arrange them ازاي تاني؟ this way. We should start with X12 اللي هو كان مغنيسيوم، Z11 اللي هو بقى صوديوم بالنسبة لنا، and then ال N19 اللي هو في الحقيقة يبقى البوتاسيوم. So we arranged them in ascending order according to their atomic size. اللي احنا عملناه دلوقتي ده it's one of the famous questions to arrange the elements في التable in general، لأن one of the objectives to study this curriculum is to know the location of some elements in the table, and of course it's important to know the place without knowing the name. It's not important now to know the name or to memorize the name of the element, just check where is it in the table. So all the time you need to put the table, the real periodic table, beside you when you answer any question to check your answer. So now again, احنا النهارده اتكلمنا عن some of the main groups in the modern periodic table. اتكلمنا عن الالكالي metals. They are in the most left side of the table. They are in what block? S block. They are in group 1A. They are lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium. The last one is francium، بس هو ده radioactive element يعني ممكن مش بنذكره. والهيدروجين كمان because الهيدروجين is a non-metal, it's not from the metals, but لأنه it has just one electron in the last energy level, so we put it in group 1A. يبقى all of them they are alkali metal. Of course, lithium has a smaller size than sodium because lithium has how many energy levels? 2. But sodium has 3 levels, so it's a little bit bigger than lithium. Potassium is much more bigger because it has 4 energy levels. Alkali metals are characterized by their lower density than water. This is why lithium, sodium, potassium, if you put them in water, they will float over water surface. Of course, they will make a reaction, and we are going to talk about this reaction later on. But they float over water surface. And finally, potassium, rubidium, they have more density than water, so they sink in a basin, or if you put them in a beaker or a basin that contain water, they will sink down. But lithium, sodium, potassium, they will float. Finally, as they are metals, they have metallic luster, they are shiny, and they are good conductors of heat and electricity. This is all about physical properties of alkali metals. Now, let's go to talk about chemical reactions of the alkali metal, but this will be in the next session إن شاء الله. أتمنى إن كنتوا تكونوا استفدتوا من السيشن بتاعة النهاردة. This lesson is connecting between all the previous lessons together. So study well, stay safe, and see you next time إن شاء الله.